Yeah. Now, all right, here we go. So we're talking about the cybersecurity threat landscape. All right, now, first off, we have to talk about, well, what the heck is a threat, right? Can you explain? Yeah, with regard to cybersecurity.
With regard to cybersecurity, I mean, can it be anything that compromises the system? You know what I mean?
Essentially.
Man in the middle type could be, denial of service.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
But the key word is the possibility of a malicious attempt to compromise something. It could be a system, credentials, etc. Can you see that okay? Or is
I
that
see, yeah.
okay? All right. Now, there are some different ways to classify threats, okay? Let's start with, they could be internal or external, all right?
All right.
Internal, external. So what I mean by internal, essentially an insider threat. It could be an employee that's disgruntled. They did something bad to him. He's like, screw you guys. I'm gonna steal your data. It could be external. So some sort of actor that's outside the network, outside the company. Okay? Now, other ways to classify. Sophistication. Okay? So depending on the type of threat, they're gonna have different capabilities. So if you imagine like a kid from high school is probably not going to have the same cyber firepower as somebody that's like in China, right, with their own government team. So sophistication is a way to classify. Let's talk about resources, which is essentially related. So we have we have state actors essentially, which are associated with organizations that have a lot of resources to dedicate to hacking something like Equifax, for example, right? Or Experian.
Did you get paid? Did you get paid for that?
What, hacking? What do you mean?
There was an Equifax leak.
Oh, actually I didn't. But did you?
No, I don't think I had an account because it was like 2017, right?
Yeah, I think, okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Generation Z.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, I should look into that. I might have a check that could be on its way. But anyways. Yeah, so the intent helps you classify what kind of threat it is. Intent, right? When we talk about intent, we already talked about an internal threat, maybe disgruntled, right, employee. We can talk about hacktivists as well. We're talking about anonymous and that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, hacktivists.
Yeah. So, and we'll go over that shortly, different kinds of intent, right? Now, that sort of leads us into threat actors. We have some that you might be aware of, right? We have white hat, which essentially hacks things with authorization on a network. Typically, they have great insight into what a network has, their capabilities, right? That's white hat. So imagine you get your certified ethical hacker certificate or something of that nature, and then you're contracted with a company to test their systems for security purposes. You'd be a white hat hacker. Yeah, black hat. So black hat is the opposite. Essentially someone who could be internal or external, that hacks or exfiltrates your data or something of that nature, and or does something malicious on your network. That's black hat. Their intentions are definitely evil. Gray hat. Gray hat is a little interesting because what gray hats typically do is that they'll illegally hack a network. And then, are you familiar with gray hat?
Yeah, so basically, like they'll find a vulnerability, but then it's like, hey, pay me for finding this type of thing.
Yeah, essentially, and they do it just for to let people know that their vulnerabilities exist, not necessarily to cause harm with the black hats. We already talked about hacktivists, and that's pretty straightforward, right? For political purposes primarily, or it could be someone who I'm cursing, who messes with PETA, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Script kiddies, are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay, script kiddies. It's a derogatory term for someone that is trying to be a hacker, but they're not very good at it. So maybe they're just starting out. So people will often call them script kiddies, okay? Okay. Let's talk about state actors or advanced persistent threats. This is pretty important because this is one of the most important or more dangerous sort of threats. We already talked about China, right? There's Russia, North Korea even,
Do you think they pose a very real threat to the democracy in the United States?
Do they pose a real threat to our democracy? Yes, I'd say so.
Because I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. You know, the instance of taking out the whole electric grid. You know?
Yeah.
Have you seen them? They're trying to ban TikTok.
They're trying to ban TikTok. Oh yeah, which they should, right? I'd say, right, but the TikTok situation is interesting because it's like even if they do get sold to the U.S., I was told, well, I heard they have to rewrite their code and everything. Really? So I would only feel even remotely, comfortable after that happens, to be honest, because.
So you're not on TikTok right now?
No, I'm not. No, I did create an account a long time ago on another phone, but I haven't used it. No.
Maybe I should close this out.
So yeah. So you good?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I had to close it out.
Right. So advanced persistent threats, essentially state actors, that sort of deal. They're not your average script kiddie, and they're not your average black hat. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they're backed by
advanced persistent threats.
Yeah, advanced persistent threats. They're actually real people that make attempts to get on your networks. Okay. Perpetual, consistent attempts. All right. So let's also talk about organized crime. Organized crime, just like you're watching the old mob movies, right? Essentially, but cyber based. People who are into, finessing, stealing identities, stealing data, ransomware, right? Mm-hmm. Any ways that they use illegal activities and they integrate technical capability in order to make money off of crime online. Competitors, this is interesting because I feel like maybe it's one that people sometimes don't think about. Like the world of cyber espionage and competitors, people can actually, exfiltrate data and use it for somewhere else, right? For another company.
What's interesting about all this is that, TikTok, I was watching the Russians or other Ukrainians, they're using drone technology. I mean, the people in the Middle East, the Houthis and they've been using drones as well. But it's crazy because it's like thing and they control it, and it's like, they literally been training us by playing video games.
Oh yeah, that's funny, right?
For that type of stuff, because they have like a flying drone and they just like strap like some type of artillery round to it. Yeah. And they put on their little goggles and they're controlling. It's just like.
Yeah, that's nuts, right?
I know, so it's like a video game. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, man, like all those people in the Air Force, they're getting trained on those Reaper drones. Like, hey, it's just a video game. Just press them,
Yeah. But you're actually blowing people up. Yeah. That's nuts. Wow. Yeah. And let's talk about threat vectors. So threat vectors essentially are the various different ways that people can make an attempt to compromise a system or a network, etc., right? Mm-hmm. So we have files, messaging. Messaging entails not just SMS, but you also have social media, right? So we're talking about all the different ways that, instant messaging can be enacted. Mm-hmm. Email, obvious one. We talked about cross-site scripting before and links, that sort of deal. Click on a link, next thing you know, you're messed up, right? Physical. This is one that's very interesting, right? Because it can actually have not just a physical component, but a technical component as well. So imagine someone knocks on the door. I remember I gave this example a while ago, wearing their vest. They're like, I'm here to fix your pipes, right? And they take out a USB and they plug it into your computer real quick when you're not looking, and they add a back door, So the physical component can integrate, a technical component as well. So removable media, I just mentioned, removable media, that's an example. USBs, or actually not just USBs, it could be someone that's plugging Ethernet cable into your network. That goes back to the physical example as well. So keep in mind, so a little creativity has to be involved when thinking about threat vectors. Then we have the cloud. The cloud, for which you're familiar with, we had AWS. I'll say this right now, is keep in mind that one of the most ways that data that shouldn't be accessed is through S3 buckets. Do you remember S3 buckets?
S3 buckets, yeah, that's what we talked about on the cloud.
On Amazon Web Services. Yeah, it's not directly related, but I just wanted to throw that out there because it's a pretty important point. It's I saw that on a test recently, actually, the AWS security test. And then the supply chain, and I find this one very interesting actually because that's like some real espionage type stuff. Because imagine you're ordering a part from a company, right? And in your supply chain, there's the manufacturer, and there's a lot of different ways that people can compromise your technology.
Yeah, the Chinese stuff. Like
Well,
they said,
they're-
all the
yeah.
electronics and stuff, they probably put in secret microphones.
Yeah. So they're
And iPhones.
yeah, the entire line, right,
Mhm.
of being pushed to the customer or to the company. So the manufacturer, they could do a lot of things. They could replace some of your parts, that has spyware on it or something. They could add some software that you're not aware of. Maybe on the way to the facility, somehow they get their device that looks just like yours on the truck or something, right? So all the way down the line for the supply chain, there are opportunities to compromise.
I'm just thinking of all the businesses or whatever I can create that can incorporate like espionage with like hacking. You know what I mean?
Right.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot you can do. So it's definitely needed, you know what I mean? Very, very needed. And you mentioned, like, especially when we're talking about protecting power plants and things, where I talked about industrial control systems and data acquisition systems. You said what?
A net runner.
I mean, net run, huh?
Like a net runner, you know what I mean? Like surfing on the net, like
Oh, yeah.
I'm the specialist. I'm the net runner.
Right. Well, essentially. Oh, that's what you're going to call it? Net? Oh, that's actually a cool name.
Because, like, right now you're telling me all this information, and what's picturing my mind, because, I've been talking about the war between AI and all that, and rogue AI. And, because I'm just thinking about Cyberpunk, right? Cyberpunk 2077. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah. I haven't played it, but yeah.
Yeah. So at first it used to be a tabletop game, but then they made the video game, and I thought the video game was really good, especially with all the concepts. And basically the story is that in the year like 2030 or like 2050, the corporations were waging war against each other, right? But they were using AI to do that. Long story short, somebody created an AI that basically wiped out the entire internet. Or it like fractured the internet to like where the AI, they're like trapped behind basically a firewall. You know what I mean? And so it's like, it's very interesting to say the least.
I mean, there's a lot coming down the pipe, so we're just gonna have to wait and see. I mean, I wouldn't want it to be like that video game, but shit.
It's Cyberpunk, man, it's the future.
Yeah, it's funny how a lot of things that they predicted like way back we're doing now.
Yeah.
Like James Bond, like, hello, like your watch?
Yeah, 007.
Yeah, 007, all that type of stuff.
That's
so
what
you
I
never
imagine
know.
is like a combination between like 007 and like a hacker or something, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that would be fun, To be honest, I feel like I do a good job in the CIA.
Yeah, you dressed up like Agent 47 Hitman.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? Walking with your suit tie.
My red tie.
Yeah, like, because you disguise yourself with the different disguises.
Right.
And I was working security, right, last year. And I was like, it'd be so easy to disguise yourself and, like, take out whoever you need to take out. Albeit, like, you probably won't get away.
Yeah.
But if your mission is solely to take out somebody, like, I was at the event with the monster trucks and all that.
Yeah.
For some reason, somebody hired me. They're sitting right there in front of me because that's where they placed me at.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Not saying that I would, but it's like Agent 47, you know?
Right, exactly. Damn. Yeah, I mean, the world is interesting, with regard to that. And then let's talk about the final thing, which is threat intelligence. So there are various different places to get it. There's open source, which we've talked about open source. Basically, everyone has access to it. That's different from closed source. So there are some closed source sources as well, for which it's proprietary. So that makes sense. They've developed that stuff for a long time, so they don't want everyone having access to it. There's government sources as well. And there's essentially vendors as well. We're talking about Microsoft and things of that nature that provide threat intelligence as well. And there are threat maps that you need to take a look at. A threat map's essentially, it's almost like a map. So imagine a map of the United States, and it gives you like an overview of all the attacks that are happening at a certain time period.
Really?
Yeah. So you can find threat maps on the internet. And yeah, that's about it. So when we talk about threat intelligence, this is pretty important. So as a side note, so imagine you're at a company, you're securing all their stuff, right? Threat intel is very important because one of the major things you have to use is what's called an intrusion detection system.
IDS.
Or, yeah.
IPS.
Right. Yep. Yep.
intrusion prevention system, or intrusion detection system.
Right. Right. And you need a system information event
Yeah, see,
management.
yeah, I just learned about that. I was
Yep.
taking the one of Cisco's free courses or whatever.
Yeah.
Basically ran through that.
Yeah. Oh, good.
It's all coming together, man.
Yeah, good. So the reason why threat intel is important, because if your, let me see, if your threat intel gets out of date, you can have things like 0 days. You know what I mean by 0 day, or right? You can have things like that, or new vulnerabilities, right? That are not detected, but they're not yet reflected in your system for your system information event management or your intrusion detection system, or IPS. So you always want, if you do choose a source, right? See, one of these, it's key to understand your source is updated on a frequent basis, okay? And obviously the other technical component, ensure that this is pulling, right, at the correct intervals, and it's always up to date from this end, and make sure that's up to date as well.
Now, I
So
was
that's
also
very critical.
reading about that they're often not put in the network because then